you editors and your colleagues from various media houses and organizations. I want to warmly welcome you to State House. I do so mindful of the fact that this is the first such meeting we are holding, and that you represent different ownerships, editorial paths, and tendencies which in some constitute our national media industry. Yet I am aware that one common denominator you have in that diversity and even competition is the fact of being Zimbabweans. We are all sown to this land. Whatever our ownership and editorial policy, we pursue and espouse as individual media houses or organizations. We commit ourselves to serving our nation. Indeed, for all times, to defending its interests, safeguarding its sovereignty, working for its stability and justice, and for the unity of our people in their diversity. This is what we mean when we say nyika inovakwa, inotongwa, inodzivirirwa, gonamatirwa nevene vayo. It is my wish that we meet more often in this extended way, so I get to appreciate your thinking, your work, and your challenges. The same way I would want to believe you are just as eager to do the same in respect of my work as an elected public servant and a leader of our nation. Nation building is always a collaborative project, and we all have roles to play in that binding process. I'm actually aware that your industry is having to survive in a very complex and a challenging environment where many things have and continue to change. Not least among these is a seismic shift in reader, viewer, listener interest and behavior. Much of it caused, motivated, or aided by giant technological changes and possibilities. The old media is dead, and with it, old modes, models, and ways of doing your craft. We feel the impact and the repercussions of these changing technologies, even in our own sphere of government, which is supposed to be stable and traditionally change-averse. Things are no longer the same for everyone, and never will ever be. All sectors are having to adjust, not least your own. Only a few days ago, I made new appointments to our government, which included a portfolio I never thought I would think about a few years ago. Big nations think they now have the prerogative of planning their economies with our resources in mind. It is as if national boundaries have been collapsed in their favor, evidenced by emerging laws on critical minerals which foreign blocs are drafting, but with African resources in mind. This is an emerging threat we now have to contend with. Just looking at your products, I can see a similar strain from those big changes as they impact on your profession and your industry. I'm very keen to hear from you who are in the cockpit and get your thoughts on how government should assist so you survive the headwinds of this global change. Government values a vibrant media industry. That vibrancy is underwritten by viability of the media as individual businesses. Above all, our national media are part of our institutional identity makers. They must be sovereign and self-determining in thought, expression, and in the interests they express and defend. Comrades, we meet at a time when there are many developments in our economy, some good and some bad. As interpreters of our society, you face these developments daily as you process your copy for your readers. What that means is that you must and deserve to be well informed in respect of the immediate world about you. So you report from knowledge and understanding for the benefit of the reading or reviewing or viewing public. The more reason we must meet more often so we share perspectives on this critical matter. We make policies, you report and comment on them. That makes us partners. No less complex is the political terrain, which is always in a state of permanent flux. As with the economy, society expects you to be in the know and to offer directional insights on the political trajectory. Well, we are the political actors, quite often writers of the political script which shapes the daily life of our nation. Your profession is to read and understand that script, which we do not always write legibly. So you can report and comment on it. From where I sit, I'm always fascinated and even amused by your attempts at reading and interpreting those politics we ourselves do. Some political issues you do report well, others with quite some dramatic imagination. All in all, I want to believe you do it all in good faith. Once there is purity of motive, which is to inform and serve the national interest, even lapses and failures, which are inevitable from time to time, will always have a ring of dignity and a gallantry about them. I am hopeful that after today's session and many more such sessions in future, the chasm between us as actors and you as observers and interpreters progressively narrows. Your capacity to handle political copy must continually improve so our citizens, who are your readers, are better informed. Another area you might find vexatious relate to foreign affairs. You do not need to feel inadequate about such vexations. Even I, as your president, daily am having to grapple with buffeting developments happening worldwide. We are on the cusp of a new world order where the hitherto old and familiar now looks challenged and dying, while the new and emerging is still too unclear and even too shapeless for us to grasp what it is. Key actors in global affairs now follow templates which they invent as they go. Templates which only make sense by hindsight. Being a young African developing nation, we have no pretensions to authoring this emerging world order, not even playing midwifery to it. Yet we have to influence, survive, and live in it. Zimbabwe is now in the chair of the Southern Africa Development Community, SADC. I want to formally thank you all for the role you played towards making the SADC summit held last year such a resounding success. What our chairmanship means is that we have to help our region navigate through these tumultuous global times whose echoes daily reverberate in our own region. It could be by way of electoral politics, it could be by way of foreign interests seeking to coercively influence our region or a part of it. Indeed, it could be by way of instability and even complex conflict situations such as we are witnessing in the Congo. We are having to summon new tools or even inventing them so we tackle these new challenges or old ones with new dimensions as best we can. Whoever imagined that SADC and the East Africa Community, EAC, would hold a joint summit. Yet that happened only just over a week ago, with the promise of more such summits in future. I'm barely a day from the 38th ordinary session of the African Union, AU, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. We are having to cope with many changes and challenges, and are having to chart new trajectories as nations, sub-regions, and as a continent. Again, all that bears down on you as interpreters of events and developments in the world. This is the more reason we must meet more often, so we share notes and perspectives, and so we constantly update each other on these and more developments, always breaking out. When my spokesperson, George Charamba, consulted me on this edition of what I believe is going to be the first of many such to come, I readily acceded to it, more so given that this is the beginning of yet another year into my mandate. It is vitally important that I share with you my thoughts on what the government plans to do in the year we have just begun. It is also important that together we discuss how we can assist each other to make the year another success for our nation. I told this young man, Charamba, that the invitation must embrace as many leaders from your industry as possible, the good and the bad. I'm happy you are here in your numbers and diversity. I would want to interact with many more, including those publishing online. I also told Comrade Charamba that everything is on the table so that we engage and exchange in the spirit of complete openness, with nothing and no area being regarded as taboo. If any matter is raised which might verge on the sensitive, I will still engage it, while appealing to you to exercise due restraint and responsibility in the national interest. That way, we can take each other into confidence, making this forum mutually beneficial and worth our while. With these remarks, I'm ready to participate in the session as you have formulated it. And once again, you are most welcome.
Thank you very much for those directional remarks. Well, all that remains for me, ladies and gentlemen, is to resume my seat and watch you as you interact with His Excellency the President.
There's been a push to amend the Constitution to 2030. What is your position on the push?
It's not imaginable that there is anybody in the country who can push me. I feel very unpushable. And very solid. And I've always said I'm a constitutionalist. My 2 terms, when they come to an end, the country and the party will move on by electing my successor. That is clear day.
Maybe a follow-up, Your Excellency, is the respect which is expected either of the presidency, not when you were there only at the Heroes Eka, but even before, we could see this rancor.
This is the vibrancy of democracy. The foolish and the wise both have their day in Zimbabwe.
Are you likely to caution some of the members of the party who go out of their way to denigrate other members of the party after you had underscored that discipline is vital in the party? Discipline and respect of the leadership.
I think those who really are ZANU-PF at heart go by the rules and decorum of ZANU-PF. We have other people who are in ZANU-PF who in themselves are not ZANU-PF, but they dress the ZANU-PF regalia. So you must always see when people talk and they see to which camp they belong as they open their mouths.
You have said and you've restated this point that you will leave when your term ends, or you know when you will leave, the day and time. But like my colleague here said, there's still a lot of confusion. There's the 2030, people were saying you should extend your term to 2030. Can you state and pronounce your position clearly for the whole nation, for the international community, for us, so that when we write our stories, we have the proper information? What is your opinion? When are you leaving, sir?
I thought you are putting it very clearly. That I'm very clear. That I have 2 terms. And these terms are very definite. And I'm so democratic. When they come to an end, I'll step aside and my party will elect my successor. That is as clear as day. Those who have other imaginations, it's a democratic society for people to dream. But facts will take the day.
You have said you cannot be pushed, but you have been on record saying that the voice of the people is the voice of God. Can you be persuaded, and will you be persuaded to serve beyond 2028?
I'll persuade the persuaders, not to persuade
Most of your first term, a lot of people were actually warming up to the policies of the government, and now they begin to say we are fatigued by the same narrative where the economy continues to tank. Do you believe that Zimbabweans have really understood where you and your government are going in terms of wanting to uplift their lives and better the economy?
Yes. It is not easy to have everybody on board at the same time. But as we move on, people will understand the trajectory we've charted for ourselves. Any policy enunciated by any political party can be subjected to interrogation by other elements in society, and that is democracy. And I'm not worried about that. But we are focused on what we agreed as ZANU-PF to implement our policy.
From what has happened over the past few years since you took over to where we are today, Are you happy with the state of the economy? Do you feel let down, or you feel you've achieved or even overachieved? Are you happy with the way things are?
No, I would say that we, as a country or as an economy, would have wanted to be better than the way we are. But challenges continue to face every single economy, not only for Zimbabwe, the entire region, or perhaps as a continent. But I'm happy that as Zimbabwe, we are rising up to the challenge, and we are doing utmost best to manage our economy and the challenges facing it. And fortunately, recently we've had good rains, and our economy is basically agricultural. And having a good season is a huge impetus with regard to a positive trajectory with the growth of our economy. And I'm happy that our people are embracing this good season we're having. And our people are very hardworking with regard to making sure we stay on course. So we should not be disappointed by challenges that face us. There is no situation where a country sails through without challenges. But I think we are doing better than what people would have expected.
In the past few days, we saw the US actually imposing sanctions on South Africa, and we have been going for 24 years on sanctions. Now my question is, since around 2007-8, when we had our own meltdown, our people moved to South Africa and set up jobs. What then are you planning, or are you talking to your counterpart? When South Africa is now hit, their economy is hit, they are likely to come back. Are we able as an economy to absorb them? How are we going to respond, knowing that South Africa is our biggest trading partner? They are hit by sanctions. Our economy is not going also to scream.
I can assure you that those who impose sanctions on other countries should have learned a lesson. Zimbabwe growth was faster when we were under sanctions than before sanctions. So if you want the economy to grow fast, impose sanctions. So we are a good lesson. We have developed and grown our economy under sanctions. I don't think South Africa would be an exception. South Africa is a solid country with a solid economy based on its resources. And I believe that the people of South Africa are rooted in South Africa themselves. The outside the world can only assist what the South Africans themselves can do for their country. So don't lose sleep about the people imposing sanctions on other people.
Just last week in your first cabinet, you highlighted that you don't want to see punitive taxes on businesses that stifle growth. But at the same time, we have a monetary policy statement that's coming in and saying to farmers in the horticulture sector, for instance, you're now only supposed to retain 70% of your foreign currency instead of 75%. One would look at it and say the president is for development and progress, but on the ground we are seeing a different narrative. What's your take on that?
Things don't get perfected overnight. As we pronounce ourselves pillars of authority in the various sectors of the economy will fall into line, not overnight, but in the process.
When you came into power in 2017, you were condemning corruption right, left, and center. You even gave people a moratorium of 3 months to return spirited money. We extended it by a month. Then names of the accused were published in newspapers, and that was the end of it. And people now, they believe that your government backs more than it buys. How far with fighting corruption in the country? In fact, some people, they are saying that the biggest problem in Zimbabwe is not the economy, but it's corruption.
I think when the dog begins barking, the next is to bite. So if we are barking, what is left is biting.
For how long are you continue to bark?
You will feel the bite when we bite.
this morning, this interaction, it is my hope, I'm sure it is the hope of my colleagues, that we begin to see you in a much different light, but which is quite positive, because we have had the opportunity of interacting with you. It is so important because a country can either progress or regress because of the attitudes of its own people. At times there are inadequacies, at times there are lapses, at times there is ignorance, but which can be constructed to mean an adversarial attitude towards the leadership of the country. If we don't get to interact and meet like this. So, because my job is very easy to say thank you, but I want to say, you can only say thank you when you've got a glad heart. I have a glad heart. I'm sure my colleagues have got glad hearts. Would like to thank you, Excellency, for having given us the time to be able to interact with you. Mr. Jaran, we thank you so much. So, on behalf of my colleagues, would like to say, may this long continue. Thank you.